Wow.
Well, I'll just get right into it because I know we're on a time crunch. I've got a doctor's appointment to get to. Damn it. Welcome to the show, everyone. Welcome to Of the Publishing Persuasion. I'm Angela Montoya, aka the Angela Montoya, author of Sinner's Isle. And I am here with the Melanie Schubert, just badass queen with the coolest haircut I've ever seen. I mean, you're bitching. You look rad, Melanie, with your purple hair. Love it.
Thank you, my darling. It actually used to be like this, but it might have been right before Pitch Wars, which is like I didn't exist to you then. I think when it was Pitch Wars, it was half shaved and it was long
Yes.
red.
Yes.
But
Damn.
I've
Yeah.
always been circling back slowly to this one. So I'm glad yeah, he did a good job.
Yeah. It suits you. The purple suits, I think. Just color. You can handle the colors, which is only really cool people can do that, I feel.
Listen, you. Flattery will get you everywhere. Also, it's been purple for like a year, dude.
I thought wait a second. Wasn't it blue?
It was like a year ago. It's been purple this whole time.
What? I have to look back at pictures now because what the hell?
To be fair, I mix purple and blue when I dye it. So sometimes it leans more towards purple, sometimes it leans more towards blue. But the bright blue that I had was like, I haven't had, it's like a year ago, the blue. It's been a year. It's been a year for you, hasn't it, my friend?
I think that's it. Like before Melanie and I even got on recording today, I had totally butchered telling her that we had a time shift. And like I have just been messing up my times, everything. Like especially this last few weeks, I've been getting worse and worse. And apparently I don't notice hair color, which is something people would notice. But I'm noticing that necklace.
Oh yeah, it's dropped down.
Ooh, yeah, well, that's why I keep noticing it.
Sorry. Do you know what? My eyes are actually there too because I'm like, this keeps creeping down. It's gonna very quickly become a different type of show. Oh my gosh, before I forget.
Yeah.
Because I will forget. Last show, you said something about past lives story that I had to remind you to tell me this episode.
Okay. So this is I don't know what made me think of this. I can't freaking remember like how I thought about this again. But listen, let me tell you something, okay? And I don't know what everybody believes. I don't know. I don't know what I believe anymore about anything. So let me just tell you something.
Am I afraid? Do I preface this with like nightmares?
I don't know. No, it's not scary.
Okay.
Randomly, I was driving and I just like this. Because I was thinking of like my most embarrassing moments. And but randomly, when I was thinking of that, this other memory that I think I had suppressed, like popped up. And so of like maybe 10 years ago, one of my sisters was because obviously I'm a little neurotic about things or whatever. I don't know. A little uptight, I guess. And so she was like, yes. And so she told me, oh, you should go to this woman who does like Reiki cleansing
sort of about that.
And so I get there and the lady was like, oh, choose certain rocks. And then lay down and I'm gonna place the rocks on your body. And I was like, okay. So I was like just plucking like gems and little like, fool's gold, whatever I thought was like pretty and like kind of interesting. And so she was like placing on my body and she was like, oh, well, this says that you have mother issues. And I'm like, oh shit, we're going here. So, but anyway, we went through this whole thing and like, she was like, oh, do you get motion sickness? I was like, yeah, I do. I can't even be in the lake or anything if it's moving too much.
Really?
And she was like, yeah, I'm really bad. My whole family is.
What?
And so she was saying that a couple hundred years ago, my family, we were all together on a ship. We were Italians, and our ship capsized. And that's why we always feel so nauseated when we're on or near water, is because of this past life. We were all together and we died.
Oh my days. Oh my
Yeah,
days.
right. And I was like, okay. And I didn't know how to process this. And then she asked, because I had the rocks, and she said, well,
Mm.
do you have like this like emotional like worry about your daughter in particular? Like you constantly thinking of
Did
her?
she know you had a daughter?
No, we hadn't really even talked. And I was like, bitch, like, do I need to run? But I was like, yes, like Alicia in particular,
Mm.
she has anxiety.
Mm.
And so I'm always just more anxious about her, because I'm like, oh, I gotta, make sure she's okay. She was saying that we like were like we lived on these lands, so we were indigenous Native American, like we had, we were here, she and I, we were sisters. And that during like colonial colonization, she was taken by a Frenchman, and I like found her, like I did everything I could to find her. And so it was like this weird thing. So
That's a
like,
story. That is a story that you need to write. Oh my gosh.
yeah, but it was just like, but I was tripping out because I was just like, I suppressed all of these
Mm.
things that she told me, I think, because they scared the shit out of me. Because honestly, it all felt very right, and like
Mm.
weirdly right. And I was like, damn,
Mm.
this woman hit. And so I was sitting there in my car trying to think of like embarrassing stories, and instead I was like bawling my eyes
Oh,
out.
I love that journey for you though. That's kind of beautiful.
Yeah,
And I
so I don't
definitely,
know.
yeah. I'm open to, honestly, I'm quite open to believing in past lives. And it's funny, like, we did our big trip, like living in the van, traveling around Japan. And like part of that was we often wound up in like these tiny little country towns, seaside towns. And like, because we lived like, it was just like we could only afford to do it for so long because it was like a painter's van with a futon in the back. And
Love that.
because Japan has something called Michi no Eki, like a road stop where you can just like park up for the night, there's toilets, etc. And they have the onsen, the hot springs, where you can pay whatever, $5 to $50, depending on how fancy it is, to bathe. And often when I would go to the onsen, which you bathe naked, right? So I stood out like a sore thumb, this Croatian Australian in these tiny towns where there was no foreigners, just like coming in naked. Like as if because like I became familiar with those customs, and I'd often get the older ladies, especially, being like, what are you doing here? Like just as we're chilling naked. And I would just explain to them we're like doing this camper van journey, and like I really love Japan. And they would sometimes, people would want to know more. They were like, why do you love Japan so much? And I like, one of the things I would say, because like the number of times I would be in Japan and just have this feeling like I've been here before, I know this place. And I sometimes I would say, like half jokingly, half seriously, I think I might have been Japanese in a past life. And one time this grandma looked at me and she said, you feel Japanese, like deadpan. And I was just like, I cried. Like I had chills on my body. I cried, and I was just like, I don't like, that's the highest compliment she could have given me. But like, yeah, I'm open to believing that that's a thing. Like that energy continues on and is reborn.
Yeah,
So who
no,
knows?
yeah, literally, who knows? But it's kind of a really beautiful
It's
thing to think about,
beautiful.
and especially like what the lady was saying, which I have never seen her again. Maybe I should go
Too
back.
scary.
I, I honestly like, my whole body was so jittery. It
Mm.
was like I had been electrocuted or something. I mean, whatever she did to me, like
Mm.
it like shook my core. But
Wow.
anyway, but she was saying a lot of times you are with, these people in different lifetimes.
I love
Like you're
that
finding
idea.
them. And I did. I honestly, I really, really do. It's like
I could
you're,
cry over that.
it's kind of a beautiful thing. Like there are soulmates, and it's a lot of time it's your family and friends in a different way, but they're soulmates that
Mm.
you're like going through this journey and learning. And I don't know. It's interesting, but it is kind of beautiful and scary, but it's
Yeah.
something. But it feels almost right. Like what she was saying was almost too right, because it was like all this weird trauma, but that you're healing in this next life. I don't know. It's so interesting.
Healing the generational traumas is something I hear a lot recently, and I'm like, it kind of sounds like that vibe.
Yeah. Yeah. So I didn't have an embarrassing story.
Oh my gosh, this is you getting out of telling me something like embarrassing and like that you shat yourself secretly sometime.
Oh,
It's like, let the Australian tell the listeners about the time she shit her pants. And you tell this beautiful romantic story about past lives and saving your daughter. I am not letting you get away with that. There needs to be a story where you shit yourself.
Okay, listen. I have peed myself plenty of times.
Have
Okay. I
you?
have peed. Oh, sure. Let me tell you. Okay, here's one time. Okay. But this is the time I'm honestly quite proud of myself for this.
I have no clue what to expect right now.
So, and I remember this so clearly. I was probably 10 or 11, and I was wearing overalls. And those things were old, like they were my, I don't know whose before. And so they were kind of hard to get out.
Oh
And
my
so
god.
it was after, like it was an after school program, and I rushed to the bathroom because of course I waited till the very last minute. And I was sitting in the stall and like, oh no. And I was like starting to panic and like dance in the stall, and I could not get it off. And so I just peed all over myself. I just let it loose. And we didn't have cell phones back in those days. I couldn't just sit in the stall and call my mom. And so I just peed all over and never got that thing open. And so I opened the stall and I'm looking, making sure no one's out or around. And I kind of scuttle out of the bathroom, and it had just rained. And so I saw this puddle, and I pretended to fall into the puddle. I don't know who saw me, who was out there in the office, like looking like, really? I pretended I fell into the puddle and just landed perfectly on my ass in the puddle and made sure to cover up all the pee. Like I soaked in that puddle of mud. And I came, and then nobody came. Nobody saw me. Nobody. I was out there by myself. And so I got back up. Now I am muddy. I'm sure I still smell like pee, but you can't tell because I am dirty.
You're dirty.
And so I scuttled. Thank you. I am rather proud. Nobody ever, came to me and said, "Hey, listen, Angela, we know you pissed your pants." Nobody said that. And for that, I am forever proud of myself.
Wait, how old were you?
Like 10 or 11.
That was very clever, quick thinking for 10. Like,
Thank you. Well, let me just explain something to you real fast, Melanie, okay?
yeah.
I learned recently, like my star chart. I don't know what I am, but I mean, obviously I'm a Scorpio, but there's other things. And one of the things, which I was really kind of upset about at first, but they said you're a very good manipulator. And I thought, well, that's like, what? How am I? But then I thought of this story and I thought, you know what?
Yeah.
It's true. I'm great at this.
Yeah, you know what? Manipulation is the bad word of it, but like there's actually like positive ways that you can do manipulation to like be helpful. And I think if you have that you're that, like you know how to like encourage people. You're an encourager.
Okay.
I
like
think
that.
in its
like
bad form, it's manipulation when you want bad stuff for people. But I think that power can be used for good. I've been thinking about that lately, like how you can like influence people's thoughts and whatever. And like, yeah, I think you're a positive manipulator if you are. But Poor little 10-year-old Angela.
Hey, she made it work. She made it work, you know? She did it.
I think that
Yeah.
needs to make it into a book as well.
I think so. I feel like, yeah, that's a funny one.
And
I feel like
speaking of books, I just wanted to shout out our lovely listener,
yes,
Doyali
I have mine
Zingaro.
too.
Yay, the happy square. This is the cutest. I actually read it aloud last night to Phil, and it's really like clever. It's funny, it's sweet,
Yeah.
it's heartfelt, and it actually has a really big message as well. So really great. Honestly, I was bawling when I like actually, even though you read it the other
Yeah.
day, when I actually opened it and saw in print that like, you know, our silly chats about pissing our pants and cloacas and whatever, but like the heart of the podcast, the community and stuff, that's what shines through to a listener enough to put a dedication into. I'll read it on the pod, so we have it on the pod once. She just wrote in her dedication to her family, to Mr. Alderson, her teacher, and for Melanie Schubert and Angela Montoya, whose podcast of the publishing Persuasion brought me back to the joy of storytelling.
No.
It's like, I honestly am really moved by it. And yeah, like it was so lovely and unexpected. So thank you, Doyali. You
Yes.
made both of our days, I think.
Truly. I mean, I think we've been having this really beautiful emotional time lately with our listeners and just like people who support us. So that was like the cherry on the cake, the icing, the cherry, the
Yes.
whipped cream on the cake. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because like last episode we were really talking about like the community surrounding us, and like that was just another thing that came out of the ether. And the other thing was being invited to be on the Not Writing Advice podcast. Kelly and Rocky. I did a little podcast interview where I was the guest. It was really weird. I felt like very like shy and imposter syndrome-y at first, but like they are pros. Like once I was actually on there chatting to them, I was just like very at ease. And yeah, it was just like super sweet and unexpected. And yeah, just it was again this thing of like our community is really beautiful around us. And
truly. Well, unfortunately, I'm gonna cut it short.
No.
But speaking of like beautiful community and just like good humans, a very, very good human is who we had on the show today. I mean, she came with her smile, and instantly I was like, okay, we've got another one of our people here. And so it was really, really cool. It was fun. So yeah, we had Isabel Cañas on, which she's an idol of mine. Her writing is like next level amazing, and she's just a next level amazing human. So it was really, really fun. But I'll read her bio.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You volunteered. I'm so here for this.
Yes.
Also, we have to go because it's creeping lower again. My top. It's creeping lower. There's a time ticker on how long this is gonna hold.
Yeah, before we're censored. We'll get this out. Isabel Cañas is a Mexican-American speculative fiction writer. After having lived in Mexico, Scotland, Egypt, Turkey, and New York City, among other places, she has settled in the Pacific Northwest. She holds a doctorate in Near Eastern languages and civilizations and writes fiction inspired by her research and her heritage. She's just all-around badass human.
Such a badass. I can't wait for our listeners to tune in and have the writer therapy that we just experienced. So yeah, let's get her on.
Hello. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Hello. It's so nice to meet you guys.
Oh, it's so good to see you. I'm so excited. Thank you for taking the time to talk with us. I know you have a busy day planned ahead. So thank you.
Got to catch a boat.
That's exciting.
I've been looking forward to this. So thank you for being flexible. Yeah, this was a spontaneous trip to Canada. So I'm glad that somehow my sleep deprived brain remembered to get in touch with you guys to be like, oh shit, guys, can we change the time?
Yeah, we would have made it work any way we could have because we were both really excited to have you on. So
it is an honor.
No, it is our honor. Seriously. Yeah, we are talking to the Isabel Cañas. So yes.
Yes. It sounds like a glorious little getaway. Anywhere on a boat, I'm like, yes.
My in-laws live on Vancouver Island, and so we take a ferry we drive to Port Angeles, Washington, which is best known for appearing in Twilight.
Oh.
And so I get to live my best little Bella Swan life by driving through the woods, and then we hop on a ferry and come to Canada. It's amazing. It's the reason that we moved from New York City to Seattle earlier this year, was to be spitting distance from my baby's grandparents. So
that's so special. I love that. Like my in-laws live across the road from us, and it's the best. It's so nice.
Jealous. I have friends who also have in-laws right down the street, and I'm like, if only.
Yeah, as long as they're good in-laws, I guess. You know what I mean?
Exactly. There can't be too close for comfort. Yeah. But like the way with my mother-in-law cooks, I'm like, yes, live with me, please.
Oh yeah, totally. Now, when you go, I mean, is it called Forks? Is it actually called Forks?
It's literally called Forks. Like literally, I whipped up my phone when we were waiting in line for the ferry because I saw a bus that says like route number 14 to Forks. And I was like, oh, I have to.
That's so funny. So like the actual town that appears in Twilight is that town.
Yep. Forks, Washington is a real ass place in the middle of the woods. It's tiny, apparently. It's just kind of like a little speck on the map. I've never been, but my sister is determined to do pilgrimage. So at some point in the near future, I'm sure I will end up in the back seat of the car while we drive to Forks, Washington.
You
it's
must.
A little hodunk 2-horse town that is Forks.
How funny. Yeah, you have to go now. And I'd imagine like as soon as you're like in the woods, you're just like hearing
It's so atmospheric. Like the weather is super different on the Olympic Peninsula. It's just like mistier, it's foggier, it's delicious. Like I'm living my best life.
Oh,
wow. Well, we're so happy to have you on the show. For our listeners who haven't heard about you yet, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name's Isabel Cañas. I'm a Mexican-American speculative fiction author, which is kind of an all-encompassing term that I use to mean that I dabble in genres across the board and sometimes in the same book. I grew up in the US and Mexico City. I've lived a little bit of everywhere, it feels like, and I've settled, as previously mentioned, in the atmospheric, delicious, wonderful Pacific Northwest, and I'm very happy to call it home. And I write full time, and I have the perfect rescue dog named Maple, which I think is a critical part of my bio that I really should get my publishers to update.
Maple.
Maple, as in the Canadian maple leaf. She's a Rottie mix, and she's a 75-pound lap dog.
Oh, I've heard Rottweilers are actually really affectionate.
She's so sweet. All she wants is cuddles. Like literally all she wants is cuddles. Like you cannot get this animal to go for a walk longer than 15 minutes. She's like, no, we could be on the couch. And honestly, I love that for her.
Oh, dream dog, like a cuddly, big old dream dog. I love it.
Yeah, I have big dog privilege and I have like this cuddly creature. It's yeah.
I'm jealous. My dog is like a elevated cat. Like she will only hug me if deigned that day is acceptable.
Yeah. My sister's dog was like that. She's like, I will tolerate you. I suppose now maybe you can pet me. But yeah, so Maple lies at my feet while I write, and
I love
living
it.
the dream.
Maple. You're here for Maple. Did you know you always wanted to be a writer?
I did. I remember dictating stories to my older sister before I could write. My family make fun of me because I have like the creepy filing cabinet memory brain of the family, the one they always come to for birthdays and old addresses and everything. But I remember being probably about 4 years old, dictating stories to my older sister, and I would draw the accompaniments. And I grew up homeschooled for a very long time. I think from the ages of from second grade until high school. So I was that weird homeschooled goth kid in your freshman English class. And my time was basically spent writing Lord of the Rings fan fiction, to be honest, and then Holly Black fan fiction. And eventually I think I got very quickly, I moved on from fan fiction into writing original fiction when I was in high school. It was all deeply derivative, profoundly derivative. But yeah, that's what I did. And when I was in college, I got a little bit more of a life. I lived in the Middle East. I did an undergrad and master's in the UK. But when I moved back to the US for graduate school, I wrote my first novel when I was 26 and just haven't stopped since.
The floodgates opened. Well, that's what
It
they
is a
say.
drug.
Feed it and it grows, you know? Like people are always
Absolutely.
like, oh, you're so creative. I'm like, I just fed that thing. You know, if you feed that thing inside
you do.
Mm.
Absolutely. And I'm lucky because when I was homeschooled, my mom, I come from a family of storytellers. My mom is a writer. She was a journalist, and she was always very nurturing when it came to letting me read whatever I want, letting my sisters and I read whatever we wanted, and also encouraging the writing. And then I also did NaNoWriMo for the first time 10 years ago. It was November 2013, 10 years on the nose. Wow, how special. And that was the thing that really taught me that the muse doesn't just like alight on your shoulders, like whenever it wants, like the dog who says, hello, yes, today you may cuddle me. Like you have to show up and do the work. And it's always when I have my hands on the keyboard and I'm actually writing that the ideas come to me. And so since I had a baby, it's like kind of all gone out the window, but in the normal times, I have a daily practice of just writing absolute garbage, just stream of consciousness, brainstorming about this project or that project or things that happened to me that day or whatever, just to have my hands moving. Because the act of the hands moving is when the muse shows up.
Yes.
How cool. I mean, that's really, really fun that almost 10 years, like to the day. And you know, that you started NaNoWriMo and now here you are, you've got books, you've got amazing stories. What was your querying and submission journey like?
They were, I think, not as bad as some, but still a bit of a ride. I wrote my second novel in 2017, queried that very lightly, and then heard about this thing on Twitter called Pitch Wars. The dearly departed Pitch Wars. For listeners who are unfamiliar with it, it was a pitch contest where writers got paired with mentors, some of whom were authors, some of whom had sold books or had not, and they would help you like polish up your manuscript and a query letter for an agent showcase at the end. And my agent was not formally a part of Pitch Wars. She was lurking. And I was fortunate enough to get like 30 something full requests off my pitch, which was bananas when you think of the querying atmosphere right now. And every time I got a rejection, because of course I got bunches, I would just fling another query into the abyss. And I remember I queried my agent, I think it was the Tuesday before or like the Monday before Thanksgiving in 2017, and she requested the full on Wednesday, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So like that woman wanted to see the manuscript, and it's Kari Sutherland at KT Literary. And we got on the phone the next week and we just clicked. So in terms of creative chemistry, she's fit. Like I really am really, really happy with her. We really click. And we polished up my manuscript and sent it out and got a lot of meh interest, real meh interest. It was a YA fantasy, and YA fantasy has always been tough to break into. I think it's way tougher now. It was already getting tough then, back in early 2018. We got one offer, and it was a pretty lame offer. It was lowball. It was rights grabby. It was not it. It was not it. And so the editor who actually offered, who is, I think she's no longer in publishing, so I can say this. She's dead to us. I was like, well, Isabel's Mexican. Why isn't this manuscript like more Mexican? And I was like, okay, you want more Mexican? Like, fine, I'll do more Mexican. I'm a big believer in the power of spite as a motivating tool. So I was screw you. I'm gonna write something more Mexican. And then I wrote another book. We went on submission with it, and it was too Mexican. So it was another young adult fantasy, and I was like, great, there's no winning. So second book on submission lasted from like late 2018 all through 2019, and I had one revise and resubmit that ended up going nowhere, even though I spent 6 months on it. And I got a rejection for that manuscript when I was in Mexico City on my honeymoon in 2019. And I was devastated because I'd spent 6 months on the R&R. I was feeling very discouraged, after 2 straight years of rejection after rejection, 2 manuscripts, lots of close calls, lots of complimentary language, but thanks but no thanks is in the end. I felt that I had to pivot because the fantasy thing was not working, which was really tragic for me because fantasy was my bread and butter growing up. See, also the Lord of the Rings fan fiction I wrote when I was 14. High fantasy is my shit. And I absolutely love I love fantasy, period. So I knew I had to pivot. And I was like, okay, well, does that mean pivoting to adult fantasy, or does that mean pivoting to another genre altogether? And my husband, who's a champion at the get back in the saddle kind of pep talk, said, okay, well, it's October, November's coming up. You love NaNoWriMo. So, we have these 2 projects that you're thinking of, this adult fantasy or this, haunted house horror story that occurred to you. That it was very lightly sketched out, but you really like it. What do you think? And I thought, let's try horror. I had just spent several weeks in Latin America. The vibes were right. It was pouring rain. October in Mexico City is my favorite month because of how gloomy and delicious the weather is. There were thunderstorms every night. It was pouring rain. And one of the last nights of our honeymoon, I was falling asleep at 1 a.m, when you wake up and start to drift back off. And I heard this voice narrate the first chapter of what later became the Hacienda, this powerful, distinct voice, just starting page 1. And I immediately snatched my phone off the table. I was writing as fast as I could, my little thumbs aching, because I was like, this is it. This is the beginning. And even though I had no outline, I'm very type A when it comes to planning my books. I knew I had the voice, so I had to start. So I wrote that book in end of 2019, early 2020, and we sold it in October of 2020. So the story has a happy ending because I think we were on submission for maybe a week. When I was we were scheduling calls with editors. This was the summer Mexican Gothic hit it big. So I think editors were like, we want that again. And so my book is not Mexican Gothic again, but it's the vibes, it's not Mexican Gothic again in many ways. So we went to auction within 10 days. And it sold in October of 2020. So coming up on 3 years, it was a wild ride. And it just goes to show how fickle publishing can be and how critical timing is. Because if it hadn't been for Mexican Gothic, would people have picked up my book, or would it have been another book that was just too Mexican? We'll never know, happily enough. But that's kind of my journey.
Wow. I've got chills just listening to the entire story. I mean, just the fact that wasn't Mexican enough, too Mexican. And then, Mexican Gothic opened the gates, possibly, and now here we are. You've got 2 books out and they're beautiful. And that voice that you mentioned is so there. Because I remember very distinctly listening to the audiobook of the Hacienda and just having full body chills, holy shit, this woman can write. And
the minute I heard that actor's voice, I was like, it's him. We're done. You're hired. You say less.
It just makes me so happy just hearing, that not hearing that it wasn't an overnight success, because we love those too, but knowing that you battled to get this book and the right book came at just the right time. It's really, really beautiful to hear.
And I just love that big magic of that muse when it just takes you like that. That's the fire, the true fire of writing.
Absolutely, Melanie. I live for that. Like
Me too.
that is what is the drug that has me hooked, because you don't get it all the time. You
Mm,
don't. And so when it hits, you just feel like it's like when you get a runner's high and like your skin is tingling and you're flying and you're like, this is it. This is it. Let's
yeah.
go. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
It's not on
wouldn't
our.
know. Oh, sorry. I
Sorry.
was just gonna say I wouldn't know about the runner's high, but I imagine I get it.
Yes. I was just listening to your incredible journey and all your perseverance. And yeah, it resonates deeply with me. Like during all those times when you were waiting, getting rejected, how did you manage that?
Uh, I said earlier that I believe in the motivating power of spite. Um,
Mm,
spite is a very strong force in my life, and I really relied on it in those times. I live by the I'll show you kind of
mm,
mentality. That was really helpful. I think this is really critical for people who are querying and on submission. I had a support network of people who were outside of publishing
Mm.
who helped me see, like, okay, this rejection, even though it's from this like big shot literary agent who was like, sorry, close but no cigar, in the end, it doesn't really matter. Like, it only takes one good yes. And I say good yes because I did get an offer on my first book that we went on submission with, and it was a bad yes. It was pretty lame. And thank God that I had the agent who didn't just want another sale under her belt, but wanted the right sale. That's another reason that like having a good agent or having no agent is better than having a bad agent. I think that would have really set my career off on a completely different trajectory. But hindsight is 2020. I think going through all that rejection, definitely having a support network of people who know, like, loosely what it is the hell you're trying to do, and also love you despite the failures. I think one of the most discouraging things about coming out of pitch wars was having, like, some like loosely knit groups of friends who dropped you like a hot potato as soon as they got the hotshot agent and you no longer mattered.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those people have circled back now that I have, books on shelves, and I'm just like, ooh, the social climber energy though. It's cute. It's a good look for you. Bye-bye.
yeah, the spike can work there too, to like get rid of toxic clingers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think if you feel in your gut that a friendship is not in a friendship in publishing is not genuine, absolutely listen to that, because your time is way too valuable. And it takes a lot of emotional energy to be in this biz. It's hard. It's really grueling. And so I think having that support network of normal people, the
Yes.
normies who care about things like, I don't know, real life, I don't know, fill in the blank, Taylor
Maybe
Swift,
ones,
sports ball, those things.
the ones who maybe actually want to see you succeed and aren't like
Exactly.
freaked out by your success.
Exactly. Like, whether that's friends or family. Oh, it's so critical. Having like that, what's the word I'm looking for? Just that breath of fresh air that reminds you, oh yeah, to like kind of pull out of the publishing rabbit hole sometimes, because the stakes can feel very high, I think, in publishing, because it's such an emotional business. Like, what are we selling? Our daydreams. Just serving them up on a platter for capitalist consumption. And that's very difficult. You have to wear a really thick skin. And in order to build that thick skin, you need people on your side who will help you shoulder each rejection and point out that the road can be long. It's okay. Lee Bardugo did not get, I think also publishing is like very focused on the young ingenue who just is like an overnight success, who breaks out at 19 years old. She's still in college, and of course it's an Ivy League, and of course it's like a major deal, and there she is. Isn't she cute? Isn't she shiny? And Lee Bardugo, like the queen of our times, did not get published until I think her late 30s. And I think there is the other thing that helped me when I was getting all those rejections and was no longer like the young new cute thing on the block, but was like the weight of age weighs down on me. It was remembering that, like, with time and with work, with studying craft, like my writing will only improve. And so when that moment hits, the books will be even better, because the more time that passes, it's just more time that you get to really polish your craft before suddenly 1,000 eyes are looking at the words on the page that you wrote.
I got
So
a
that was
chill.
also,
I never thought about it like that. That's such a good point. Like, polishing yourself, because like when that moment does come, and if you're kind of like underprepared, undertrained, underhardened, that thick skin, like that would crush you, right? Like potentially.
Because it is suddenly very strange to have to be perceived. You know, all we want, those of us who are pursuing publishing, is to be perceived, you know, and then when it suddenly happens, you feel very vulnerable and very raw, because these are our babies. These are the books that we write, are the product of hours of daydreaming, hours of hard work, a lot of our emotional feelings, our stories, everything, like a little piece of our soul goes into every book. And all of a sudden people are like, okay, well, how are we going to sell it? Okay, well, you're getting tagged in the 3-star, 2-star review on Instagram. And it is, it's wild. It is very different to be on the other side, having 2 books out now. Angela, you're going to be okay. But like, Sinner's Island day clock is coming up. It's right around the corner as we record this.
Yes, like so everything you're saying, I'm just like absorbing it, and honestly, like, you're the shit. It's really fun to listen to you. Literally, I could just listen to you all day talk about publishing and books, and just that reminder of having people on your team outside of publishing is huge. And like living outside of publishing is huge. It's funny because I'm gonna be on a friend's podcast tomorrow, and one of their questions was like, you know, what do you do for fun? Which is something I think about often. And I didn't have an answer, because this is it. This is the whole shebang right now. It's my entire personality. And I keep having to remind myself, like, live outside of your laptop and this bubble.
It's hard. It's hard because, like, I think especially those of us who are debuting or early in our careers, writing was the hobby and we had the real life, you know, and then slowly, or the job or school, and slowly the scales start to tip, where writing takes up more and more and more the more successful you get, thank goodness. And then work, and then it becomes work. And so then when the hobby becomes work, what then is your hobby? I think replacing that and finding something like mindless and happy. And I don't know, I love to crochet. Like,
yes,
I crochet ugly shit for my child, and I make blankets, and it's something, having a hobby where you just have no pressure to sell it. Huge.
Yes.
Yeah, huge. Very good for the mental health.
100%. And I think like that's it right there. Very good for the mental health. But that's also I think the reason why we struggle to make time for our hobbies, because productivity is rewarded in this environment. And the more you grind, the more you hustle, realistically, you see the success, right? But I think the reminder has to be to like force time for things that don't suck that energy, so you have the energy. That's how I guilt myself into relaxing. I'm like, you're not going to be able to continue on if you keep writing this right now.
Oh, it's so true. It's so true.
I'm taking notes. I'm listening. I'm absorbing. I will get there. Well, I want to talk to you more about Vampires of El Norte, because it's another amazing book you have written. And it's just, I honestly just love listening to your sentences, which might sound funny, but I just love listening to how you word things. And like, just a simple sentence will get you so far. And I just adore your writing
so much.
You're welcome, of course. Now, where was well, first of all, tell our readers who for some reason haven't listened to it, which is funny because we have a Discord group for our listeners, and one of our listeners was like, oh my gosh, I just finished reading Vampires of El Norte, like, you guys, and I was just laughing because I was like, well, guess what, we're having her on next week. So it was just really, so everybody loved your book, just everybody in the world. But can you tell our listeners?
Publishers Weekly, I'll tell you that. Tell you that much for free.
But can you tell our listeners who haven't read your book what it's about?
Yeah, so Vampires of El Norte is what I like to bill as a supernatural Western set in 1846 in what is now South Texas on the Texas-Mexico border. And it's about two childhood sweethearts who encounter something monstrous in the dark when they're 13 years old. A tragedy occurs and they're separated for 9 years. And they're thrown together again on the road to war in 1846 and have to face down threats to their home rancho that are both very, very real and very, very supernatural. And there's kissing along the way. Hot cowboys, vampires are, of course, the things that go bump in the dark. It's written, it's what it says on the tin. And yeah, hijinks ensue.
Yes. All the kissing. I was kind of like, I was there, and then you're like, and the kissing. I need a bit of that in my books.
I absolutely do. I remember at the end of last year, I was working on a short story and I was like, what is wrong with this thing? You know, like poking and prodding it. And I realized, oh, there's no romance. Okay, into the trunk it goes. Moving on.
Yes. If there's no romance, what's the point? We need the kissing.
Of course, there's a point to books that don't have romance, but like, those aren't the ones I'm going to write. It's just what I've discovered. It's what I've learned about myself. And that is that. So Vampires of El Norte, structurally, on like a skeletal level, it is a romance. It has a happily ever after. And the relationship between the two main characters, Nena and Nestor, is definitely at the forefront of everything that happens in the book. So it is a big old genre bender in it. You have it's a Western. There's romance, there's a vampire element that gives you a little bit of horror. It's historical. It busted my ass in terms of research. So when you come into this book, there's a lot going on, but you can definitely count on the fact that there's going to be a strong romance to carry you through to the end.
That's so cool. How was it writing this compared to La Hacienda?
It was a whole different ballgame. So with the Hacienda, I was like seized by that muse. I had the voice, and I had just moved to New York City, and I was like kind of alone. I didn't have a lot of friends. My husband was working all the time. And so instead of working on my PhD dissertation, which to be clear is exactly what I should have been doing, I just binge wrote the Hacienda, the first half of it, sent it to my agent, got comments, sat down with it to write the end, right in April of 2020. So we were all in lockdown. And so again, it was one of those experiences where I just went into tunnel vision, writing. I was just looking back through my notes for the Hacienda, actually, and I was writing like 6,000 to 7,000 words a day at the end. Can really only keep up that pace for about a week, but it was enough to get me to the end. So it was like this incredibly immersive experience. And Vampires of El Norte was very different because I was writing it in between chapters of my PhD dissertation. So I necessarily had to take like long breaks from it, which for me, I've discovered not my favorite thing to do. Two, it's the characters came very strongly to me, but the plot, I wrote a whole book and then like axed the second half of it because the plot just was not working. I had to excise a whole speculative element. I had to change a ton. I had to basically rework Nena from the ground up. It was really hard. I think the second book of any contract, but especially the book that follows up your debut, is everybody talks about how the second book is super, super hard. Vampires of El Norte really resisted domestication. It was just wanted to be like 800 pages long and have 600 characters. And I was like, sis, you are not 100 Years of Solitude. Like, I regret to break this to you, but we are a commercial book. And in American commercial publishing, in this particular genre, we do have to fit a certain page length. And unfortunately, listen to our editor and cut some characters, which was tragic. But it was really hard. It was really, really hard. I did a lot of rewriting for this book. I think more rewriting than I've ever done for any book since. And also I got pregnant right in the middle of it. So I had morning sickness.
Oh my gosh.
You know, that was a bit of a rough ride. I'd say finishing this book coincided with like, it closed one chapter of my life and helped open another. So it was a bridge in between two very different chapters of my life, which is cool. But it also, as I said before, kicked my ass. Really kicked my ass. Structurally, it was tricky, but the characters and the setting always came to me from the very start, were clear and vivid. My mom's family's from South Texas and have been for generations. And so the setting of the book was very near and dear to my heart, as were the characters. So they helped, that carried me through. The vampires underwent like several makeovers, the speculative elements underwent, the plot, all of it underwent like several different versions. But the characters and the setting were always the same. And so that's what I kept coming home to. But yeah, it kicked my ass.
Would you say that's been the hardest part so far of your writing journey?
Yeah, honestly, that book, period. The rejections were rough, but I think writing this book was harder because the Hacienda had just been released. And I was very, very thrilled to have so many people reading it, but also all of those people read it and were super excited about the next one. Which just even now, it's like I'm paralyzed just thinking about that. Like, oh shit, the next one, I better not disappoint them. Which is hard because I think I blend genres. And so among my readers, there are people who prefer one bit of the book, or one bit of the book speaks to them more than the other. Some people are there for the horror. Some people are there for the kissing. And a lot of people are there for both. But my second book, I think Vampires of El Norte, has a little more kissing than horror. Some people said it was scarier than the Hacienda. And I'm like, great that you think that. I think I disagree. Unclear. But the book belongs to the people now. It's no longer mine. But there's some people who are like, this has too much kissing, not enough horror. And then there are people who are like, give me more spice. Yes. Yeah, so I think it's hard because you have to realize at one point that you're not going to please everyone, period. And you just need to let go and write for yourself first.
I love that. I love it.
It's hard though. It's so hard. It's so hard.
Yeah. Yeah, because once you've impressed people with something, you kind of want to recapture that. You want to give the reader the experience that you gave them. But yeah, like you kind of have to come back to that heart of like telling yourself the story. Otherwise, you're right. It's paralyzing to think of everybody's opinions around you of what you're doing. It's just...
it is absolutely paralyzing. If you let too many cooks into the kitchen, I think it definitely has the potential for me to make or break a project. And so one thing I do try to remember is to write for myself first. That is the lesson that book taught me. It taught me a lot. But definitely writing for myself first. And that's kind of the way that I ended up with so many genres in it. But people ask me like, why'd you do that? And I'm like, because I wanted to, bitch. Like, that's what I want.
I am feeding off this like energy that you're bringing, because I also agree that spite can be like a very like strong, powerful force, and I am just living for the energy right now.
I am living.
My chart is Scorpio all the way home, baby.
Okay. Now it makes sense.
I have a Leo moon, but the rest of it is Scorpio all the way home. So that will tell you all you need to know.
This humble Pisces bows at your big energy.
I accept.
I love it. Yes, I'm a Scorpio too, so I love it even more. I love this.
I liked you.
Yeah, it makes sense now. It all makes sense. What's been your favorite like part of this whole journey?
I think there are a lot of highs. I think for those of us who've spent a lot of time getting rejected, especially for things like, no, your book is too Mexican, it can be very vindicating to succeed. And be recognized and have your hard work recognized. I've worked really hard on my craft. And so having that recognized by readers and by critics has been really cool. But I think the thing that has brought me to tears on a number of occasions is hearing from Mexican or Mexican-American readers who reach into my DMs and say how much the book meant to them because they resonated so deeply with it and connected so much with the characters or saw themselves or their family members in the characters. And it makes me, I'm a hormonal new mom, so it makes me choked up right now, but that is who I'm writing for. And I did it, you know. I bridged that. I reached out to them. I reached into the world saying, like, this is me. I have not found a home for myself on the bookshelves. And so I made one. Come in. And people have come in. And it's really been so wonderful. I had my first in-person event in Seattle in September, and got to connect with some of these readers face to face. And it was absolutely, it was really moving. It was really moving. So I wish that I had had books that are like the books that are being published now when I was younger. I obviously can't change that, but I can sure as hell make them. So that has been the best part about this whole thing, is the connections you make. You really click with some readers, even readers who aren't Mexican or Mexican American, who really love the book. One woman came to my event in Seattle and cried. She was like, I loved this book so much. And I was like, oh my God, that's why we do this, isn't it? Like, yeah, of course, like the accolades and the vindication and like feeling like having your hard work recognized feels amazing. But at the heart of what we do is emotional connection. That's the purpose of literature, is to make people feel like they're not alone. And when that happens, I think it's why I get up every morning and keep doing this.
I'm feeling a little emotional. So it's beautiful. It's really, really beautiful. And you did it. Like, bitch, you did it. You have books on the shelves, you know what? And they're beautiful. Like,
and there will be more.
And there'll be more. And I love that. Like, you are making space. You are up on the shelves and you are there. And it's so wonderful to see. And I see our time is gone, and I know you've got a ferry to catch, but I just want to say, like, thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
It was my pleasure. It was my pleasure, honestly. Thank you so much for having me.
I was not ready. This was like the writer therapy edition. I didn't know I need, but seriously, I agree with Angela. I could just sit and listen to you talk about writing and publishing all day. And yeah, it was so wonderful to meet you, and we're cheering for you always.
Likewise. I'm so excited for Sitter's Isle to come out, and I'm on an Instagram hiatus right now, but I'll come back to shout about it because I'm very excited for you.
I appreciate that. I really do. I do.
Yeah. Well, it's going to cut us off now. So
it's going to cut us off. Go enjoy your trip. Your hard-earned trip.
Stay in touch, guys. I'd love to connect again further. Yeah. Okay. Bye.
Okay. Bye.